Hello and welcome to this introduction to crash analysis. In this seminar, we are first going to see what is crash and why people are doing crash analysis. Then, I'm going to speak about explicit methods and why they are well adapted to crash simulation. Next, I'm going to introduce what is Alter Radios and what does it solve. After, I'm going to detail the standard workflow to set up and run this type of simulations. And finally, we are going to see the application of this to the simulation of a honeycomb crash box. So let's start with what crash analysis usually cover and why people are doing crash analysis. Crash analysis are basically impact at speed higher than 1 meter per second and usually lower than 100 meters per second. In standard vehicles development, they often also cover all cases leading to high deformations, and generally all analysis related to passive safety. Now let's see why doing crash analysis. We are doing crash analysis to assure and improve the safety of vehicles occupants, to ensure the safety of pedestrians too, and also to ensure structure and system safety, such as the wing hit by a bird, batteries impacted by other vehicles, and so on. All these concerns are the subject of regulations first. Regulations for automotive, aviation or rail. All the rules that must be fulfilled to get certification and to be allowed to put a vehicle in circulation. Then there are all the new car assessment programs, or NCAP, such as US NCAP, ASEAN NCAP, and so on. They encourage car manufacturers to develop safer cars. These programs evaluate cars with respect to safety, and they deliver ratings with number of stars. In addition, several associations are performing their own evaluations, such as the assessment by ADAC of safety of baby and child seat, or assessment of the repair cost after low-speed crash for insurances. Finally, several manufacturers have their own internal requirements to differentiate them from their competitors regarding safety. Why doing crash simulations and not only tests? Often, at the beginning of a project, only CAD are available. Crash tests are destructive and hence are quite expensive, specifically on prototypes. If you look at this animation, one will need at least 2 or 3 vehicles to validate the car with respect to the display cases. Whereas with simulations, it is quite easy to evaluate different configurations and several variants. Finally, more and more certification by analysis are accepted by authorities. Simulations are giving to the engineers a better understanding of the behavior of any part of the vehicle or assembly they are working on. Even if these parts are hidden during the crash, one can access stress state, plastic deformation, forces going through whatever component, absorb energies, etc. And so, simulations are helping to reduce time development. In the end, they enable to perform optimization analysis, in particular to reduce weight and cost, and robustness analysis to check the behavior of a design according to given dispersions due to manufacturing or test conditions or whatever. Let me now present you 2 slides that illustrate well the challenges of crash simulations for OEMs and manufacturers. These slides have been originally presented by Laurent Di Valentin, KI expert leader at Stellantis, at one of our conferences in 2018. First, the evolution of crash simulations at PSA, now part of Stellantis, over the past 30 years. Starting from models with simple structure and few elements used mainly for feasibility assessment, at the beginning of year 2000, every project was already gathering several KI engineers performing crash simulations. Today, current models may include several detailed dummies and may reach several millions of elements. These models tend to replace physical tests. The second slide shows the number of configurations with respect to different regulations and safety programs. Lots of frontal crash configuration, lots of side crash configurations to be evaluated if one wants to be present in the different regions. And this with less and less possible tests. It highlights the increasing importance of crash simulations at manufacturers. Now we saw the interest of crash simulations, let's have a look to what they are and to the approaches they use. We have to solve a physical problem in space and time while observing following physical laws: mass conservation, energy conservation, and momentum conservation. Today this physical problem is still modeled using finite elements for the discretization in space. Several formulations are available for the meshing: Lagrangian formulation, the elements deform with material; Eulerian formulation, the grid is fixed and material goes through the elements; and Ailey formulation, in which the grid can move. Eulerian and Ailey formulations are suitable for CFD applications. For crash applications, one will use Lagrangian formulation mainly. For time discretization, small increments are used, the time steps. To solve that type of problems, there are two kinds of methods: implicit methods and explicit methods. Implicit methods, the state of a given system is solved for several time steps at once. Explicit methods, the state of a given system at a given time is computed from the state of the system at an earlier time. Implicit methods are well adapted to static or quasi-static problems that are linear or not too much non-linear. In that cases, high time steps can be used and CPU cost remains small. Crash problems are dynamic ones with high deformations and contacts to manage, in addition to plasticity and often damage and rupture, so highly non-linear, and that is why we are using explicit methods to solve them. The counterpart is that explicit methods are conditionally stable. An explicit solution is stable if the time step used for computation remains smaller than the critical time step. This critical time step can be seen at the time required for a shock wave to propagate across the smallest distance in an element. The solution is unstable if information passes across more than one element per time step. So stability depends on two factors: the size of the smallest element of the model, this is a numerical factor, and the sound propagation speed in the model, this is a physical factor. Here is the classic flowchart used by explicit methods. Let's consider the state of the system is not at a given time. A new time step is computed, then external forces are determined, and through a loop over elements, strains and stresses can be computed, and with them internal forces and contact forces. Accelerations can be updated. Finally, using central difference scheme, velocities and new nodes coordinates are calculated. And then we can go for the next cycle. Let me now introduce to you Alter Radios. Radios is a structural analysis solution using explicit method and developed to solve highly nonlinear problems under dynamic loadings. It is highly differentiated for its scalability, quality, and robustness. Radios embeds features for multiphysics simulations and advanced materials such as composite materials. It has been used across all industry for more than 30 years now. Here is a brief overview of radio standard applications. The main domain of applications of radios is automotive, in which it is used at every level from component 1 to full vehicle, involving ruptures, honeycomb barrier models, dummies, and airbags. It is used for the same type of applications in aeronautics, plane crash, occupant safety with dummies, but also for bird strike or debris or hail impacts. Radios is more and more used for drop tests of different kinds of goods, smartphones, bottles, helmets, and so on. Other applications of radios are the ones based on fluid structure interactions, such as ditching in aeronautics, slushing of tanks, blast or bullet effects for defense industry. Finally, radios can be used to simulate manufacturing processes, metal stamping, composite forming, or additive manufacturing. We can start now to consider our application case, the simulation of a crash box for Formula Student. We are going to see how to set up that kind of models, and then we are going to run the simulation and see a first analysis of the results. The aim will be to simulate the impact of a 300 kg rigid mass at 7 meters per second on a honeycomb crash box, check the deceleration and the deformation of the anti-intrusion plate. We are going to use the following data taken from a bachelor work of the Institut für Technische Mechanik at Stuttgart University, geometries of the crash box, of the anti-intrusion plate and of the bulkhead, metal reference for the plate, and honeycomb data for the crash box. The bulkhead will be considered rigid. Unit system for inputs and result is kilogram, millimeter, millisecond, GPa, kilonewton, and joule. In the end, what does interest the product manager is to have results, a report that proves the product is fulfilling given requirements. And what the product manager can provide is the definition of the product. That is to say, its geometry, how it is assembled, and what are the materials. Now the big question is, how am I going from CAD to results and reports? For finite element analysis, the standard process is the following. First, get the geometries as clean as possible, get connection information and bill of materials. Then one may proceed to meshing. First, selecting the type of elements to be used for the different components, spring, beams, shell, hexa or tetra, and then discretizing the geometries in finite elements. The quality of the meshing highly influences the quality of the result. Once the meshing is done, the setup of the model can start. In this step, one defines properties, assign materials, set contacts, loads, and boundary conditions. I'm going to detail this just after. At the end of this step, it is recommended to check the model. The model is ready and can now be computed by the solver. If the run ends normally, output files with expected results are generated. One can proceed to checks of the simulation and analysis of the results, and in the end, write the report. Let's focus now on the model setup. We got the geometries, the bill of materials, and the connection locations. We defined the meshing class and got the components of our model mesh. We now have to define properties of the elements, their formulation and their thickness for shell elements, or their sections for truss and beam elements. For material laws, they may already exist in a database we can access. If not, we have to define them. First, selecting the appropriate type of material law according to the type of behavior it is and to the data we have. And then determining the corresponding parameters to fit the data. The data may come from test result or be found in literature, but keep in mind that for crash analysis, one cannot be satisfied with the elastic characteristic of a material, and its post-heal behavior must be characterized or estimated. That is to say, one needs to look for plasticity and even straight line dependency and rupture. We may now proceed to the next two steps, for which there is no specific order. For connections between the different components, there are different finite element representations that can be used. For example, for a spot weld, one can directly tie a node to an element, or use a rigid link between two nodes, or use a spring in between, or a cohesive element. The choice of representations depends on expected accuracy level and on the knowledge one has of the connection. The purpose of defining contacts is to prevent components from passing through each other or through themselves. we may define a global contact with all components of our models in. However, we may not need, for instance, to define contact between the very front part of a vehicle and its very rear part. Then we can create the load cases, set boundary conditions, loads, initial or imposed velocities, and so on, possibly merge impactors or dummies. Now we must think to outputs definition. What results do we need? How are we going to measure them? Are there specific nodes for which displacement should be monitored or connections for which forces should be controlled? We are almost ready to run our model. Before that, at the end of the setup, one should ask herself or himself, did I go through all the steps? And one should proceed to basic checks using a model checker or his own checks. Checks after the run are important too, before starting the analysis of the results. Now we've reviewed all the different steps. Let's start the setup of our model. For this application case, we are going to consider that the machine is ready. So I'm loading it in HyperWorks. We can have a quick look at the model. Check the components already defined, the crash box, the anti-intrusion plate, the bulkhead, and the impactor plate. For all the components, you can see that properties and material are not yet assigned. Before we start the definition of the properties, let me show you one radius card, the begin card, in which the unit system is defined. We are now going to create the different properties. Let's start with a simple one that we are going to use for the bulkhead and the impactor. We are going to consider these components rigid, and we can use the default formulation, and only the thickness has to be defined. Here we may consider a thickness of 1 mm. I'm creating now a second shell property. This one is for the anti-intrusion plate, which has a thickness of 4 mm. This one is deformable, and I need to define a bit more the formulation. First, the number of integration points through thickness. And I'm going to use an under-integrated formulation in the plane, which is standard in crash analysis, but that may lead to hourglass deformation. That is why I'm selecting a formulation with the physical control of the hourglass, the QEPH1. I'm selecting large deformation formulation with high small strain parameter and variable thickness with high thick parameter, and finally the method for calculating post-yield strain or plasticity with iPlast. We need a third property for the honeycomb. Since honeycomb is solid and orthotropic, I'm going to select a solid orthotropic property. For this one as well, I'm going to use an under-integrated formulation with physical control of the hourglass. In case of solid, this is HEPH formulation. And I'm defining a vector for the orientation of the material with V vector. I'm going to assign now the different properties to the different components. Let's start with the bulkhead and the impactor plate. Then the anti-intrusion plate. And finally the crash box. We are going to do the same for the material laws. I'm first creating a basic elastic material law for the bulkhead and the impactor. We may use steel characteristic for this one. As we used unit system based on kilogram, millimeter and millisecond, stress entities are in GPA. For the aluminium of the anti-intrusion plate, let's assume we only got standard characteristic from a material supplier. For such material with elastoplastic behavior and with limited input data, we can use the Johnson-Cook analytical model with simplified input. The simplified input is accessible using iflag = 1. And now I can fill the different parameters. Epsilon UTS corresponds to the strain at ultimate tensile stress. It is a bit different from strain at failure, so we need to do an educated guess. And here I assume that epsilon UTS is 70% of strain at failure, that is to say 90.6%. For the crash box, I'm going to select material law 28, which is one of the possible material laws for honeycomb. There are 1 Young moduli and 1 shear moduli per direction. And in this case, we are going to use curves that describe the yield stress as a function of strain in the different directions. I am first assigning the different moduli. To assign the different curves, I need to first import them in the model. For complex curve, I can import them through the plots ribbon. I can select the one I'm interested in, let's say the one for the direction 1. And now I have a curve that I can edit. And rename. Like that. For more simple curve, I can also create them like that, let's say for the other direction. And here directly copy-paste the data from an Excel sheet. I'm doing the same now for shear direction 1, 2. And for shear directions 2, 3 and 3, 1. I have now imported all my functions. I can now go back to my honeycomb material law to assign the different functions. First, I'm going to adjust the type of function I'm using. Here, yield stress as a function of epsilon, or deformation. It will be the same for the shear function. I'm picking now for the first direction the first function, and so on with the other directions with the other function. Now I'm going to assign my material laws to the different components. So honeycomb for the crash box, aluminium for the anti-intrusion plate, and elastic steel for the impactor plate and the bulkhead. At the end, we can check that each part is defined with the right material law. We can now proceed to the definition of the connections and rigid. In our case, we are going to define rigids only. In HyperWorks, rigids are considered as elements. For the good organization of the model, I created dedicated components. I can now create the different rigids. I want the master nodes of these rigid bodies be automatically calculated by HyperWorks. The master node is a node that controls a rigid. Let's start with the one for the impactor plate. And now for the bulkhead, I can select node from the bulkhead. and select additional nodes from the anti-intrusion plate to model bolt connections. The rigid regarding the impactor needs to be updated. For this, I'm opening the solver browser. Here I can access the two rigids. Let's modify the impactor 1. I'm updating the mass of the rigid that will correspond to the global mass of the impactor. I would like now to tie the crash box to the anti-intrusion plate. For this, I'm creating a tied interface or interface type 2. I may adjust the formulation of this interface. In our case, I could have used the default one. Then I need to select the nodes to be tied. For this, I'm creating a set of nodes. I'm selecting the nodes of the rear face of the crash box. I'm selecting the elements to which those nodes must be tied. For this, I'm creating a surface. Here I'm selecting directly the component. And I am reviewing the definition of the interface. The interface looks good. We are now going to define the different contacts we need in this model. First, the contact between bulkhead and anti-intrusion plate. For this one, we can use a simple node to surface contact with interface type 7. I'm first creating a set of nodes with the node of the anti-intrusion plate. And I'm creating a surface with the bulkhead. There are several parameters that need to be set to properly define the interface. ISTF to adjust the stiffness of the interface, IGAP and GAPMIN to adjust the gap of the interface, that is to say the non-penetration zone on each side of the master surface. Here I'm using a variable gap. The gap will be automatically computed according to the thickness of the different components. Friction and I-form for the friction formulation, and INACTI to manage possible initial penetrations. Let's do a quick review of this interface before creating a second interface to manage the contact between impactor and crash box. For this one, I'm going to use interface type 19. Interface type 19 is a combination of two symmetrized nodes-to-surface interfaces with an edge-to-edge one. For this one, I have to create two surfaces. For the crash box, that is a solid, I'm going to consider the external surface only. And a second surface for the impactor. For this interface, I'm using globally the same settings, except for the gap, for which I'm choosing here a constant gap. We can take the next step and start to define the load case. I'm first creating a boundary condition to fix the bulkhead. For this, I'm blocking all the degrees of freedom. And I'm applying this constraint to the master node of the rigid controlling the bulkhead. I'm then creating a second boundary condition to limit the impactor's displacement. This time I'm letting free the translation along x-axis, and I'm blocking all the other degrees of freedom. I'm applying this constraint to the master node of the rigid controlling the impactor. I have now to define the velocity that will be initially applied to the impactor. So I'm creating an initial velocity. I'm setting the components of this velocity, here 7 mm per millisecond along x-axis. And I'm going to apply it to a set of nodes with all the nodes of the impactor and the master node of the corresponding rigid on which I set the mass. That is why I'm creating this new set of nodes as a combination of two existing ones. We can finish this step by setting the duration time of this load case, and that corresponds to the final time of the analysis. Here we can consider that 55 milliseconds should be long enough, and if needed, it will still be possible to extend the simulation without rerunning the model from time 0. Now our load case is fully defined, let's take care of what we need to check the status of the requirements, and if they are fulfilled. What results should be output from this simulation. A first useful information would be the force versus time in the crash box. And for this I can create a section. For this section I'm specifying its location and its normal direction. Creating the section, I automatically created a second entity, a time history output. Time history keywords are used to define output for plotting data, usually of a limited number of entities, such as forces, displacement, and so on. I'm going to create time history output for contact interfaces to be able to check contact forces. Time history for rigid body will give access to force and moments in them. Remember here that in HyperWorks, rigid bodies are considered as elements. I'm creating a time history for nodes so as to track the motion of the impactor and of the front face of the crash box. A time history for parts will output the energies in the selected parts, internal energy, kinetic energy, hourglass energy. Finally, I would like to measure the deceleration of the impactor. For this, I'm adding an accelerometer on the master node that controls it. And I'm creating the corresponding TH output. Before going forward, sorry, I just realized I forgot to define which variables I want to output for all these TH. If we look at the one at the section, for example, we can see that one variable group is defined, the def1 for default variables. I did not define these variables for the other time history. That is why I'm now opening the output blocks browser to quickly update those th with the default variable groups. Dev groups include forces and moments for section, interfaces or rigid outputs. For all these th outputs, I still need to define the time frequency. How many time points do I want to have for all of them? Usually, we recommend to have about 1000 points. Here, if I set time frequency to 0.1, I will have 550 points and get enough information to plot curves. If we want to see animations of the crash, the deformation of the crash box and of the anti-intrusion plate, we need to add another type of outputs. These outputs can be generated as animation files or as H3D file. I'm first setting the output frequency time. With the frequency time equal to 1 millisecond, I will have 55 states plus the initial one. I can adjust the compression level of the H3D file that is going to be generated. And I'm adding contour outputs at nodes such as mass, mass change, contact force or pressure. Contour outputs for shells and solids, like plastic strain, or stress and strain tensors. Before exporting our model and running it, we are going to proceed to a couple of checks. First, I'm checking the mass of the model, the one due to the material densities and component thicknesses, that is structural mass, and the non-structural one, here the one I added on the impactor. Then I'm checking the possible intersection or penetration in the contact I defined. We can see that initial penetrations are detected in the contact defined between the bulkhead and the anti-intrusion plate. Actually, they were expected. Remember, I used the variable gap for this contact. Anti-intrusion plate thickness is 4 mm, bulkhead thickness is 1 mm, so the two parts should be distant from 2.5 mm, and they are only distant from 2 mm. Hence the 0.5 mm detected penetrations for all the nodes of the plate. As I define ina key equal to 6 in this interface, I'm not going to correct these penetrations, but it would be here really simple. One would just have to move the bulkhead back by 0.5 mm. Finally, I'm running HyperWorks Model Checker to look for possible setup mistakes. Here, it's only reporting a warning due to a parameter definition in an interface. Except this warning, no error has been detected, so I can be confident and launch my simulation. There is the very last thing I'm going to add before exporting the input deck, a control for the time step. I'm going to define a constant nodal time step to avoid the time step from dropping below a given limit and the simulation stop progressing. As a counterpart, mass may be added to nodes if needed. I'm setting it to 0.001, 0.9 is a safety scale factor. Nodal time steps are evaluated during the first stage of the simulation, the starter. So usually, this time step control is defined after having run a first starter of the model. I'm exporting now the radius deck, setting the name of the input deck. The deck is usually divided into two parts that correspond to the different stages of the simulation. I'm going to detail them just after. I'm checking that the engine file for the second part of the simulation will be generated as well. In the Alter Compute console, I'm loading the input deck file. As you can see, there are two files. I'm selecting the 0.rad one and I'm launching the run. We can see that several information regarding the progress of the simulation are displayed. While the simulation is running, let me detail you its different stages and the different files. As I said, radio simulation can be divided into two parts, the starter and the engine. To the starter correspond one input file, the 0.rad, that contains the model definition. During this step, Radius is checking the model setup and compile it in restart file 0.rst. RST files are binary files and cannot be edited. it is also writing an information file of what it is reading, the zero.out file. This one can be edited, and it is important to check the information it contains. The second part of the simulation is the engine. There can be several engine steps. Each one of these steps is controlled by an engine input file, 1.rad, 2.rad, and so on. Note that the first engine file can optionally be merged to the starter file. During this stage, Radios is performing the computation of the numerical problem from time 0 to the final time defined for the simulation. It is creating RST file 2 that will be part of the inputs of the possible next step. It is also writing an information file of what it is reading and of the progress of the simulation, the 1.out file. It can be edited too, and it is important to check the information it contains. And of course, it is generating the result file we define in the output step of the setup. Animation files such as H3D1 and time history file, T01 for first engine, T02 if there's a second engine, and so on. Let's go back to our simulation. The run is ending with normal termination. I'm now editing the .out files. Note that 0.out file could have been edited and checked before launching the engine part of the simulation. In these files, I'm first retrieving the Radios version used for the computation, then the list of the different entities of the model, followed by detailed settings for different entities, such as in the 0.out file, the material law we set for the aluminium. Here we can see the data we specified, and the computed Johnson-Cook parameters are exposed here. We can jump to the end of the file to find a summary of the detected error and warning. Here there is no error, and there is only one warning regarding the initial penetration. And if we look for details of this warning, we can see that these initial penetrations correspond to the one we found with HyperWorks penetration tool. I'm checking then the total mass of the model. I can also find the coordinates of the center of gravity and the inertia of the model. The minimum time steps assessed at time 0 can be found for each type of elements in the model and at nodes 2. A chart of the distribution of nodal time step is available, with an estimation of the possible mass change according to different settings of constant time step control. Finally, a summary of incompatible kinematic conditions is given. In our case, there is no incompatible kinematic condition. Let's have a look now to the 1.out file. First, one can retrieve the number of domains and processors used for the computation. And below, what has been read from the 1.rad file, here, the runtime, for example. The main part of the engine file is the list of the printed states of the computation. The frequency output of this printout can be adjusted. And for each printout, the following entities are reported. First, cycle number, current time step, and current entity controlling the time step. Then the energy error, the internal energy, kinetic energy, and external work. And at the end, the mass error. Here, final energy error and mass error are really small, less than 1%. At the end of the engine.out file, CPU time information are given. Here we can see that the elapsed time for this simulation, the time seen by the user, is approximately 200 seconds or a little bit more than 3 minutes. Our next step is the physical validation of our simulation. For this, I'm loading the H3D file to see the animation of the crash and check if boundary conditions, motions, contacts, and deformations are correct. And we can see that they correspond to what is expected. So I'm going now to load a template file with a pre-recorded post-processing session. It is based on animation NTH files and can be used again for future iterations. I'm selecting Happen Mode to create new pages after the existing session. First, we are going to check energy balance. Kinetic energy starts at the expected value. Total energy remains constant. There is limited contact energy. Mass variation, mass changes are really small. and time step variation that correspond to what we specified. Then we can have a look to the max displacement of the anti-intrusion plate, approximately 10 mm, to the stress in the crash box, and to the plastic strain in the plate. On the next page, forces monitored in different entities are plotted. Force in the contact between impactor and crash box, reaction force in the fixed rigid body, force in the crash box section. All these forces are consistent. And on the last page, we can view deceleration of the impactor, displacement of points on the front and rear face of the crash box. We retrieve the 10 mm intrusion. From this, we can compute the crash box residual length from 200 mm to 60 mm. And finally, absorb energy from the crash box and from the anti-intrusion plate. I'm going now to show you how to export these results in a presentation. I'm quickly defining the structure of the report. I'm first adding 2 slides with videos of the different animations of my session. Then I'm adding captures of all the other pages. I'm running the report to generate the different entities. And then I can export it. And we have our report with the different results. This ends this webinar. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you for your attention and have a nice day.